Minnesota was much better off than other places in the United States during the Great Depression. For one, the Dust Bowl didn't extend this far. I mean, we had bright red sunsets because of all the dust in the air, but we didn't have that. Now, so people came to Minnesota, and almost everybody in Minnesota, if you looked hard enough, had a connection with a farmer. And so they could get out into the farms, they could get food. A lot of Minnesotans grew their own gardens and grew their own food. A lot of people opened up their homes and rented out a room. So the kids would sleep on the living room floor or on the couch, and they'd rent a room so that somebody who couldn't afford an apartment could afford a place to stay, and then they helped out by paying rent. Now, in one case, there was a farm, about 10 miles outside of town, and a man had been desperate enough that he had ridden his bicycle all 10 miles out to the farm, and he had asked the farmer, he only had one thing that he could sell. He had a little jar of silver polish, and the farmer paid him ready money, paid him some cash for the silver polish, and he rode off on the bicycle happy. Well, the farmer's wife was furious with him. She said, "What in the world are you doing? You're taking our very last cash to buy silver polish, and we don't own any silver." And he said he needed the money more than we did. And another one of the men that came through was moving west, and he had been trying to get to California, and he got as far as Minnesota when he fell in love with one of the Minnesota girls, and so he stayed here. And so that's happening too. People are getting all moved around the country, just doing things like that. Another man that came to talked about how he had a business, and every single night he'd take the money that had been collected, and he went to the bank, and he of course he deposited his money. So there was all the business's money, there was all his money, everything was in the bank. And when the stock market fell and there was a run on the bank, he ran to the bank like everybody else, and the bank had no money. And so he's talking to my students, and he actually starts crying, and he was so upset because he couldn't pay his workers, because they had done the job. He couldn't pay his workers because all the money in the bank was gone. The last story I'll tell is the story of the 50-cent year. And one of my students' grandfathers told this story. He said that his family was living on a farm, and they were, they're exchanging eggs for other food and things they needed. They had strawberries but there was one year where they made 50 cents for the whole year. And his dad had been hired to chop wood. And the man had told him that if you chop up all this wood, I'll give you $1 for a day's work. Well, his dad was so excited about actually earning some money that he worked really hard, and he got all the wood chopped up by noon, and then the man wouldn't pay him more than 50 cents because he said you only worked half the day. So that was the year that they made 50 cents that whole year.